Good evening, everybody. Happy Sunday. We are here. This is the first installment of our uh, mini Detroit Tigers segment. I'm here with my co-host, Coach. If you guys are familiar with the Motor City Metrics platform, Coach is an avid supporter. He's my guy from way back in the day. You know, we've been rocking for many plus years. Big avid sports fan. So it was only a matter of time before we roped him in on one of these shows. But we setting it off with the Detroit Tigers. How you doing today, Coach?
Hey, it's a beautiful day in Detroit. It's not quite the April in the D we're used to, but it's a beautiful day out, and it was a beautiful day for another late inning comeback by the Tigers.
Absolutely, and yeah, we're getting off. We got off to a pretty good start in the first 15 games. The Tigers are notorious for we're coming out the gates very slow in April. So we've had some ups and downs, but I can't be mad at where we've started. Our record currently is 9-6. We're third in the AL Central, 3-4 at home, and 6-2 on the road. And you know, not I'm not mad at it, but from your evaluation, what have you seen thus far?
Yeah, and a fairly top down look so far. I think as we've discussed offline, the bullpen is up there. It's among the best. It's kept them in games. It's probably a reason why they've been able to be successful not only in some late inning games but extra inning games too. Extra inning games, that is. I think they just suffered their first loss just the other day in that first game of the doubleheader. They had been perfect in extra innings. Obviously, you don't want to get into that situation too much and put that extra strain on your additional relievers getting into the back or further end of that bullpen. But I, that hot 6-0 start on the road, they took advantage of. They struggled a little bit with the A's, which was concerning a little bit, but they're going to start facing some teams that on paper heading the season were supposed to be a bit of a challenge. So, hopefully this early success will lead into some additional series wins as they look up the next coming week or so.
Absolutely, you've kind of started to touch base on a couple of the couple of things that I want to talk about in the next segment. But we're going to get into the good, the bad, and the ugly because we've seen a little bit. You know, obviously we got a winning record, and I'm not mad at that. And we definitely have some things that we can build on, like you said, the bullpen. But as far as the good, the bad, the ugly, we're gonna start with the good. Tarek Skubal, our beloved ace, has thus far lived up to the hype. He's off to a 2-0 start. He's got a 2.08 ERA in 3 starts, and he has set the tone. Um, he has led the way as far as the pitching is concerned, and the results are right in front of us. We're fourth in team ERA at 3.14. We're first in average against in the entire league, and our bullpen has a 1.95 ERA, which is third in the entire league. And Mr. Lang has already lost his closing role, but Foley has stepped right in. He's got 4 saves thus far. He's got 2 wins, and as a whole, the bullpen has been great. Actually, Lang's ERA I think is only at 3 something, and he does have a save this year. But overall, from top to bottom, Shelby Miller and is his name Shelby?
Yeah, or Shelby Miller. Shelby Miller,
Yeah,
yeah.
Shelby
Yeah.
Miller and Chafin, the 2 free agent acquisitions have been good. Alex Faedo has been surprisingly good, and who else? Oh yeah, Tyler Holden. Tyler Holden is continuing the momentum he's had going into coming in from last year. So as a whole, the pitching staff has been solid. They've kept us in some games. Our hitting has been pretty shaky. So, but the pitching staff has held up to their end of the bargain thus far. Is there anything that you wanted to touch on as far as the good thus
Yeah,
far?
I mean, again, we go back to Scooble. I mean, first couple times through the lineups, first 2 times, he has been very almost lights out. Great control, good movement, lively fastball. Guys are having trouble catching up to it. It's his first. Hopefully, we're looking for a healthy year. First time pitching really in 2 years. He got hurt in the back end of 2022 amidst all of last year to surgery and rehab. So we're really just kind of hoping that he can get through the whole season with very few missed starts, if any at all, ideally, to really kind of stretch him out, get the innings in him, and really build his stamina so that way year over year, 4 years to come, he can continue to be our anchor. I think you mentioned Alex Faedo's a guy that early on I thought was impressive coming out of spring training. He barely made it as one of the last bullpen guys after being drafted as a starter. Was electrifying as a freshman at Florida en route to a national championship. That's why we picked him. Overwhelming number one pick. So it's good to see him not just being successful, but pitching in a long relief, multi-inning role is not easy to do. But as a starter, it's not too far off versus being a setup or closer where you might have 25, 30 pitches at max at your efficiency, whereas he can go 40, 50 in relatively good ease, and he's got a complete arsenal of pitches. So um, like I said, as long as they haven't had too many hiccups getting into that early relief roles, like you said, they kind of going by closer by committee a little bit based on who's available. They've got some options. So, if one's cold and one's hot, they can just kind of flip them around at AJ's disposal. And it's given him some different looks and some different pitches based on maybe some historical analysis or just some, overall analytics, depending on who they're playing. So, yeah, and I think the good is definitely got to be the bullpen in Skubal. Some of the other starters have been pitching fairly well. I know Maeda had a better start as of late, which is good. So it's a good bounce back for him. So we'll see what happens after each of these starters kind of get more than a few starts under their belt. And I think the bullpen has come out kind of leading the way, like you said, at least for the good part in there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's one more part. There's one more good that I wanted to touch on. You really kind of got to dive into the advanced analytics to really make this one hit home. But our plate discipline has actually been pretty good this year. It doesn't really translate as far as the amount of strikeouts that we've had and the amount of walks that we've drawn. But we had a few guys on our team. Parker Meadows, who's struggled mightily thus far, and as well as Mark Canna, are at the top of the league as far as their chase rate percentile, as well as their walk rate. And the part of the reason why, despite the fact that we haven't hit for much power and haven't hit for much average, part of the reason why we have been able to stay above water offensively is because this is a team that is pretty disciplined at the plate. They don't chase a lot of pitches, and they will take walks, even if they are not hitting the ball to the highest of their abilities. Parker Meadows is in the 96th percentile of walk rate. I think he's got an 18% walk rate. He's not hitting the ball. He's not hitting the ball very much right now. But if you do make mistakes and you don't throw the ball over the plate, he is not going to swing at that ball. And it's the best way that he can utilize his speed. Because once he does get on base and he can start wreaking havoc and stealing bases and getting in scoring position, he will take the walk if need be, if they're not willing to throw him strikes. And Mark Canna, he's a veteran. He's a good veteran presence, and he's always been a good eye out there and had a high on base percentage. And I feel like he definitely is setting the tone for the rest of the team, because I think he's hitting the 200s as well, but he will also take the close ball when there's two strikes in the count, because he's not gonna, if it's not right in that strike zone, he will not swing. So hopefully we can continue to build on that plate discipline, as well as get some other guys that can hit for some more average. But let's get into the bad. It's easier to talk about who is the few guys that are hitting than who isn't hitting right now. Because we definitely got some guys that are struggling. Our young prospect, Colt Keith, is hitting 208 right now. Torkelson, who's as of late kind of, perked up a little bit in the average range, but he's hitting 222 right now. And as it relates to the starting pitching lineup, you've already kind of talked about it. Maeda is 0-1 right now. He did drop his ERA down to 6 from 9, and he had a pretty quality start. But his first couple starts were not very good, and we spent some decent money on him this past year because we really need some guys that could eat some innings after we lost Lorenzen and Eduardo Rodriguez. So he has got, he's ate up some innings, which has been important for us because we do have such a strong bullpen. But hopefully he can build upon the last quality start because I think he only ended up giving up 3 runs, 2 of them earned because he had that throwing error at second base. So hopefully we can build on that because he's kind of been the one guy that has we've been complaining about thus far. And yes, Javi is struggling. Javi is struggling right now, and he's a part of the ugly, part of the good, bad, and ugly. So when we get to the ugly, Parker Meadows, he early on deceived me because he had an amazing spring. He was hitting for power. He was getting on base. And he was batting in that leadoff slot. I was very excited about the idea of having a speedy center fielder setting the plate for our hitters. But he is currently hitting 061. Like I said, he will draw some walks to get on base, but we really, ideally, because Riley Green is batting leadoff right now, but ideally you want some speed at the top of that lineup. And Riley Green is kind of, I don't know, he's got decent speed, but he's not as fleet of foot as Parker Meadows. So he's going to be, I think Meadows is going to be a vital piece of getting the offense on the right track. Just because he can, set the plate and steal some bases. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention our guy Javi Baez. He's hitting 140 right now. He did hit a home run today, which started the started the rally that we ended up winning the game. But he's already been sat down a few times this year in non-injury situations for Alex McKinstry, who he's a Chippewa, so I don't know how we feel about him, but
no comment.
But yeah, it's we've already heard the early chirps of what are we gonna do with Baez, and we got to figure out some better alternatives off the screen. We've kind of talked about the fact that we don't have a lot of guys waiting in the wings right now with the injuries we have for Baez, so that takes some pressure off him having to perform. But he's another guy that we just need to perform. Just be a little bit more disciplined out there, hit for some power. He finally hit his first home run of the year. So anything that you want to touch base on as far as the ugly?
Yeah, I'll briefly go to Maeda before we get into the rest of the hitters there. A 2-year deal. We're paying him a decent amount of money. He's kind of on the back end of his career, like you said. We needed someone, a veteran presence, to help help mentor some of the younger guys in the rotation as well as eat innings, like you said. But he just can't eat bad innings and get shelled. We need some production out of him, otherwise. Suddenly we're starting to look at Matt Manning as a permanent option to that rotation versus just the pair of spot starts that he's been called up for. Obviously, I think it's well known that he was angry at being optioned down at coming out of spring training, but he's proving why he is at least a option that can be had for an injury fill-in or something in that regard, or Maeda just can't get it done and we need to make a roster move, then at least we can elevate him. He's got obviously some past MLB experience with the club, and I think it's nice fallback to have. But getting into the hitters, right before that home run for Javi, That was his first. He had 0 extra base hits of the season. I think all 5 hits were singles, and early on too in the first 2 road series that they had. Um, but yeah, Parker Meadows, we would like to just kind of settle into that leadoff role, like you said. Hit for average, be patient, get a nice on base percentage as well, draw some walks, and like you said, speed. It would be kind of man. I feel like we'd have to go back to Austin Jackson and Curtis Granderson
Yeah.
to have but they were back-to-back center fielders for stretches of several years where we didn't have to worry about the leadoff spot, and they commanded center field very well. I don't think defensively there's really any issue with Parker. Like you said, it's just getting the experience at the major league level on a day-to-day basis, getting that confidence, getting the timing down, talk with the coaches and the rest of the teammates and analytics, and just finding his rhythm and groove. I think he'll end up coming along nicely. But again, like you touched on, Baez or Ibanez being out as well. Hinch is really using the bench fully almost every game, at least for the hitters and fielders, non-pitchers. So he's utilizing that a lot. It's just going to come down to matchups, and I really hope that these guys can stay as consistent as possible within reason. It's tough not knowing which days of the series you're going to play. And sometimes, a lot of these guys can play multiple positions. So, and you throw in, you might be playing a different position too on game 1 versus game 3 of the series, or you might only play game 2 of the series. So there's some, I shouldn't say inconsistency in that regard, because these guys are getting in almost every game, whether it's pinch hit role, pinch running role, or even late inning defensive replacement. But to your point too, Javi can't get it going. He's been fairly consistent on defense. He's made some great sparkling plays that we would maybe consider a top play. Some routine ones that maybe have been a little iffy, but as long as he's not costing runs on the defensive side, maybe you have to look at late inning pinch hitting him, as much as that hard is, considering how much he's getting paid to play here. They got a lot of guys that are platooning, so we'll see how that goes. It's fair. It's definitely an uncommon approach. So maybe there'll be some guys that kind of settle in, and AJ just says, "Okay, you're hot. We're just going to ride you for a bit until we would take a normal day off for rest and maintenance, if you will, and then we'll see how they get going." But again, they started off on that quick 6-0 stretch, starting out in Chicago and then heading out in their second series too. So, and they've kind of slowed down a little bit. Things have kind of evened out now as they kind of get into a more consistent day-to-day routine now that they're in full swing. But yeah, offensively, I think we're looking at some numbers through StatCast, and they're expected or adjusted win based on their stats. They're fair top level stats, average on OPS, things like that. They're a little bit above what they're probably right around 500. So they're a couple games over. So they're based on those numbers, they are winning more than they should be based on their analytics. But I'm hoping that as the bullpen and rotation continues to get stronger, that the offense will start to come along a little more consistently and be able to get their starters some runs early versus having to kind of scramble into the opponent's bullpen, as I think we've seen been doing more of recently.
And we're going to take our first break. Hold on one second. We are back. We're going to get into the next segment of the night. Let's see what we got on here. Let's touch base on the injuries that we have. Coach, did you want to lead the way on the injury report?
Yeah, so there was some news prior to today's game this afternoon. Ibanez was getting some field work in Comerica there. AJ was they had some questions for him. He commented they're not sure if he's going to be ready when the 10 days is up for the IL stint. But they've got a uh, 2 series here. They're going to Minnesota after in the back end of next week, and then they carry over right into a 3-game series with Tampa. So they're not sure if he's going to travel yet. I think they're going to wait for this upcoming series with Texas that's happening starting tomorrow to see how he kind of possibly improves and feels over the next couple days. But there was a funny quote. He said, we didn't have him hit. We told him he couldn't hit, and he said it was like taking a blankie away from a kid, which I thought was kind of funny because I think other than Ursula, he's been a fairly decent hitter for them to start get among that platoon rotation. But obviously, with a hitter that was doing pretty well and really better than majority of the team and the regular starters, having him back in the lineup as soon as possible, I think is bigger than what it is right now at the time of the year. So we're hopefully going to get him back. If not by the end of next week, then 2 weeks from roughly 2 weeks or a week and a half from now. So we're hoping to get him back. The only other one I saw was the Sawyer Gibson Long. He was scheduled to do a rehab start down in Lakeland, and he left with forearm tightness, and he was flown back up to Detroit. Not necessarily good news in that regard, or good vibes, I should say. He's checking in with some doctors and getting some additional opinions on his arm, which is really never one thing you want to hear when it comes to a pitcher getting additional diagnosis or recommendations from other doctors. But hopefully it's nothing serious. It's just some discomfort, and they can work it out. That there's still more to come on that. And with that, with Ibanez, we've seen Wenzel Perez up. Decent bat. He had a few hits in his first game. However, during the broadcast, I did hear from the crew that originally he was a middle infielder, second baseman primarily, but he had some concerns where Yips throwing the ball to first base, so they moved him to right field, which is where we saw him.
My bad. Go ahead. My
bad. And resuming on Wenzel Perez, he promptly went out there and looked like he kind of made an error, just not reading the ball right. It was a little windy there Saturday too, Friday and Saturday for those games, so it was a little arduous compared to fair weather. But it's early. He's putting the ball in play in the batter's box, which frankly we probably need a little bit more now than on the defensive side, but obviously errors can be compounded pretty quickly at the major league level. But that's pretty much it from an injury standpoint for the club.
All right. And the next segment we're going to talk about is what we got going on in the minor leagues. I'm going to touch base on some of the main guys at the AAA level. We got Jace Jung. Jace Jung is one of our top highly touted prospects. Who is projected to play third base, possibly towards the end of this year, just depending on how things are going. Obviously, Gio Ursula has done pretty well. Matt Vierling has played some third base, so not in a dire need because Vierling and Ursula and Ibanez are actually the best, one of the better hitters on our team right now. But overall, the AAA bats were kind of slow to start, which is pretty characteristic of the Tigers in general, especially with the cold weather. But they have since kind of peaked up a little bit. Jace Jung is currently hitting .278. He's got 3 home runs and 12 RBIs. You love to see the power. This is Jace Jung's first year at the AAA level, and it looks. I mean, he had a pretty good spring as well, but it looks like he's continuing to progress as he moves through the organization. So I would not be surprised if we saw him at some point this year. Malloy, who was originally, they were trying him out at third base a little bit just because we had such a log jam at the corner outfield position, but I think he's going to be a corner outfield for the foreseeable future. He's hitting .261 right now with 2 home runs and 8 RBIs. The best thing about one of the things that I like the most about Malloy is that he is very disciplined at the plate, which Scott Harris loves those type of guys. That he loves 2 things. He loves guys that protect the plate well and guys that are versatile and can play several positions. So although Malloy's not very good at third base, he does draw a lot of walks, and he's shown some power. He's one of the guys that we traded in the Juan Soto. No, not Juan. He was traded to the from the Braves. So another guy that we could see this year. And the last guy we're going to talk about is Akil Baddoo. Akil Baddoo obviously played in the corner outfield all last year. Struggled a decent amount, but he did show some potential. He hit for some power this past year, and he just kind of got caught up in the log jam in corner outfield. Mark Hanna came in there, and pretty much Mark Hanna took his spot as far as I'm concerned. Right?
Yeah. I mean, he was a fan favorite, especially when he first came up. I think 2 years ago, originally with the club, and I think he made it on opening day, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that. But early on, he kind of captured our attention and his flair and energy that he plays the game, which is always nice to see. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, too, as I mean, the nicest guy in the world, still going to be able to produce. And like you said, he kind of fell off the cliff, and there were some other options. And then, they went out and got Mark Hanna, who, I think is a very nice, solid veteran presence in that lineup, who's been hitting in different spots. But I think he's kind of settling in as that kind of go-to 3 or 4 hitter with some power, driving in runs, patient AB. So, like you said, who knows? He, injuries or something else happens, Baddoo could easily very well be back up with the club. And if so, hopefully he's able to put the ball into play and get some runs across for us. But yeah, the only other big name, obviously not at the AAA level, we'll see. It's probably a much longer time period to kind of see how he gets settled in, and if he produces, if he gets promoted, is Max Clark, the outfielder. I think in terms of overall potential, he's probably got the highest ceiling along with Jace, like you mentioned. Obviously, a little bit younger, but again, outfield position and whatnot. So, but we'll see. He's off to a little bit of a slow start, but we got to let him get settled in. I probably wouldn't even really put a pulse on it until maybe halfway through their season, see how he's going. But yeah, Malloy and Jung obviously cult up the big club. So I think those two guys that you mentioned will be the ones closer to maybe getting in some spot call-ups here and there throughout the year based on how the team's doing and how their health is.
Yeah, and Baddoo at the end of the day is still only 25 years old. He never really got it to go through because he was a Rule 5 pick and had to be put on a 40-man roster. He didn't get the opportunity to really develop and hone in on his skills. But he has shown some potential for power, and he's got some speed when he does get on base. So thus far, he's hitting 250. He's got 1 home run and 8 RBIs, and he actually missed a 3-run home run by inches earlier today. Ended up being a triple. So he's starting to perk up a little bit. And I'm already seeing within Twitter. I'm already seeing chance of bring him up to replace Meadows. Unfortunately, Baddoo does play center field at the AAA position, but his strongest position is at left field. So I don't know if I want to see him roaming around in big Comerica Park, because I don't think he's that sound defensively. But that's the. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No, yeah, like you said, it's a pitcher friendly park, but you need to. Yeah, I know they brought the fences in twice since the conception of Comerica Park, and more recently during the last offseason. But yeah, you need a left fielder and center fielder that are going to be a bit more fleet of foot than your normal park holds. Right field's probably in line with the average what we see in terms of coverage area. But yeah, from that center field all the way left field line, you definitely need a pair of guys that can maneuver around pretty well in space, in open space, I should say, compared to some of the other parks that are a little more hitter friendly.
All right, and we're gonna take another break right here. All right, we are back, and we're gonna we taking a decent amount of time to talk about the Tigers, but there are other teams in the AL Central. Coach, did you have any words on or anything going on as far as the rest of the AL Central?
Yeah, I mean, it's as good of a start as Detroit's had. They're, like we let off with, they're not first or second, they're third. So The Royals have come out to a surprising, really good start. I think they're right within a half game of Detroit. And obviously the Guardians leading the way. I think 10 wins. So the division has come out a little bit stronger than we thought. I think the White Sox, even after they traded Dylan Cease late in spring training, they had made some moves that clearly signaled they were going to be in a rebuild year. Of course, they had some really good years over the last handful of years. Not too much more recently, but I think the Royals might be a little bit more, like Detroit last year in the division, and especially after the All Star break. Royals were a little bit of pain in the butt for a lot of teams. They got a lot of youth, Bobby Witt Jr., some core pieces, and obviously what seems like a perennial All Star and World Series winner, and their catcher there. It's not, and they got a good young arm too, and Brady Singer. So they've kind of look a little bit like we do, I think, to a degree. A lot of young talent that's up. They're locking guys up, like we paid Colt Keith and extended, I believe, Scooble. So it'll be interesting to see how those two teams go on throughout the year. But yeah, so far Central on paper, I'd say coming out a bit more hot than we would have expected prior, breaking from spring training. So yeah, I mean that's only going to bode well for the Tigers as long as the rest of the division is playing better to competition. It's only in theory would make them better too as the season goes on.
Yeah, AL Central has kind of been pegged as the weakest division, what maybe in baseball. So, well,
Certainly in the
it's
conversation, yeah.
yeah, and it's a small sample size, so we'll just have to see if the success that we've had stands the test of time. We all know how, the Tigers. If the Tigers were above, had the best record amongst within their division against each other. They just struggled mightily against the AL East, and that ended up, being to their demise. So, it's encouraging to see that not only are we winning games within our division, but we're getting off to a better start. We started so bad in April that like we were kind of, working our way up from underground. It seemed
Yeah.
by the time we got into the warmer months. So I'm encouraged to see it, but it may be a fight right now because the Twins are in last place. Oh no, the White Sox are in last
The
place.
White Sox are in last place, but I mean, between us in third and the Guardians in first, we're all within, I think, a game at max, maybe a game and a half. So it's definitely pretty close, and all teams are at least 2 games over 500. So yeah.
All right, so we've talked about the AL Central. Any hot topics or news going on around the league that you want to touch base on?
Yeah, I'd say you look at the Yankees off to the best start right now. I think there were some questions on how Soto would fit in. Again, it's another power hitting lineup that they like to go get. So they've answered the bell. I think their pitching's been well. I know Garrett Cole has had. I think he dodged a bullet. They pulled him from a previous start, and he had some discomfort, possibly thinking it could be a long-term arm injury. But I think they gave him more of a minor diagnosis, temporary, short-term. So they're off to a hot start. And more recently, I'd say that the Angels, after letting Shohei go and they locked up Trout. Looks like he'll be an Angel for life now. They're off to about a 500 start. I don't think anyone would have pegged them to be that good out of the bat. And I think at one point Trout had a home run in 4 consecutive games going back to last week.
Crazy. That's
So it's
crazy.
just yeah. I mean, they don't have much, and Anthony Rendon took what I don't know how many games to get his first hit of the year, and they're paying him, some good money to be out there, and it's he's a longtime guy. I think he's a very class act in the league. He's never really had any issues or been a jerk to anyone in the league. So I mean, not a Tiger obviously, but they're off to a surprisingly good start. Let's see around the league. Marcell Ozuna, after he had a very off year last year, dealt with some off the field issues. legal issues. That is, he's come in hot for the Braves right now. Acuna is off to a slower start, so they've kind of traded, but that team is loaded as it is that they have been probably for the last 3 years. And I think we knew in terms of the bottom of the barrel, if you will. Miami, White Sox, and even Colorado has been off to a really, really slow start. So that's kind of how things have opened up a bit. I think two surprising teams. I don't think one, Pittsburgh, I wouldn't say is a total surprise. I think they were talked about a bit as a possible wild card sneak in team there in the NL. We just played them a couple games. They're not an easy team to play against, even with McCutchen on the back end of his career, probably in the twilight. But and the Cubs, Dodgers came in and they put up some runs in the Dodgers, who were off to a good start too. So who knows? The Cubs might be in for a surprisingly better year. And then I think just more recently, in the later part of this week, we had probably arguably one of the more highly spoken about prospects make his debut and legacy player in Holiday, coming up for the Orioles. Jackson Holiday made his debut, had a hit and a run scored in a win in Boston. So, the O's are like they were last year. They're going to be a tough team.
He got his first hit, you're saying?
Yeah, first game. I think he got his first hit and scored a run in that game. I think it was either Thursday or Friday night. So yeah, I mean it's kind of like the top level look around the league as it's looking, and we'll see how it shapes up from here on out.
All right, so let's go take one more break so we kind of wrap things up. Talk about what we want to talk about in the see in the future. Talk about the upcoming schedule and wrap things up. So let's get this break going here. All right, as we've talked about already, the Tigers have gotten off to a solid start. I'm not mad at the fact we're over 500 going into we're in April. We've obviously as far as ugly, I forgot to talk about the weather. How many rainouts have we? I mean, I know that April showers, we deal with it, especially we were playing in New York. We saw snow in Pittsburgh, not with us, but we saw snow in Pittsburgh, and of course we already know how it gets in Detroit. But that's one thing we got to that I gotta mention as far as the ugly. We forced ourselves to play on Friday, and Baez, he's from Puerto Rico. He had the shiesty on. He was swinging with his eyes closed, probably with the mask over his face. But that's neither here nor there. As far as things that I want to see moving forward is two main things. I'm eagerly. Andy Ibanez is one of my favorite Tigers. I am anxious to see him get back in the lineup. Obviously, we've had a lot of struggles hitting. He had an amazing spring, and he was starting off pretty good in the regular season. So I was very disappointed when he was injured, but I am ready to see him get back in the fold because he's a very versatile player. He can play a lot of different positions. He hits lefties very well, but he's just one of those fun, free swinging guys that he can really, if he gets a hold of a pitch, he can really put a charge into it. So I'm excited that you said that he's doing some work in the field and he could possibly get back for the next road trip. But that's number one on my list. But number two, Mr. Meadows. I love the fact that this dude is in the probably 90, at least 90th percentile as far as speed, but I need to see better than 063. Like I said, he deceived me with an amazing spring training, which you cannot fall into that trance. But there's no way I would have anticipated that he would have started out so rough hitting wise. And I need to see where that's going to go because I jokingly posted that Wenceel Perez wants his job. In his first start, he had a couple hits. He had an infield single. He had a few hits. He's hitting in small sample size. He's hitting 400. I don't know how well defensively he is in center field, but if he can hit 250, he's got my blessing to play over Mr. Meadows. You know that Meadows was under the one of the many question marks going into the year. He started off hot. He had a big home run early in his early when he got called up. But you know he got cold, and it was a question. Obviously, his brother had his own little his own little issues, and we kind of had to cut ties with him. But I need to see more out of center field, and yeah, I just need to see. And Wenzel Perez hit very well in AAA last year, and if had he not gotten hurt in August, he would have got called up. I think he would have been the one of the call ups when the roster expanded. So hey, if he continues to hit the way he's hitting, hey, I'm not mad. I'm not mad at seeing him. I think Meadow still has some options too. Not to get rid of him so fast, but 063 is just it's unacceptable, especially when you got guys like Baez who's not going to get sent down, Torkelson who's not going to get sent down. We need some production out of center field. But anything you want to see moving forward before we get to the schedule?
No, I agree with Parker. I mean, it's I think the one saving grace aside from defense in the field, like you said, his patience in his OBPS is probably the reason why he's still getting a decent amount of at bats to try and work through it. But like you said, eventually he's got to start putting the ball in play. In addition to getting a great walk to strikeout ratio and a low chase rate at the same time. Yeah, because let's be honest, the lineup in terms of how it shaped from series to series, it's been fairly volatile. I mean, Kana and Baez have been up and down. Parker's been hitting leadoff, sometimes a little bit lower. Verling and Green have been switching off at the 1-2 spot too sometimes. So I'd like to see some of those spots in the lineup kind of settle into some regulars. And then, as we need to address struggles and whatnot, or if it's injury, from a more traditional standpoint versus having to, maybe see, we've probably seen at least 4 or 5 different lineups at minimum, probably even more than that, from opening day to today. So some stability in the hitting order, I would agree with in that aspect. And I would like to see some of our starters in the rotation go a little bit deeper. I think at the top of the show, we talked about, first 2 times through the lineup for the most part, outside of Maeda's struggles, rotation's been good. First 2 times through the lineup. It's when they get into that 3rd time through, that 5th, 6th inning, we tend to see them start to struggle. But I think that is a fairly common area at the major league level, especially for younger pitchers who are with probably 3 years and under in terms of experience. That's where they tend to struggle because guys then start to get the timing. They get their cadence down a bit, and good hitters will make that adjustment throughout the game as they see starters from first to second and second to third at bat. So if those starters can kind of get a little bit deeper into their starts and get a better pitch count out of it, because we've had some guys go 70 some 80 some pitches heading into the 5th inning, or maybe an out or 2 into the 5th inning, and then they start to trip up. Then we got to go to the bullpen. Then sometimes the bleeding doesn't stop right away, and next thing you know, we go from maybe a 2-run lead, and next thing you know, we're down 2 or 3 runs, and we're trying to chase the starter to get into the bullpen.
Absolutely. And I did want to, Troy had some comments early on that I missed. Matt Manning has looked very good early on. It was pretty much between him and Reese Olson for that last spot. And they were teetering with whether they were going to do a 6-man rotation or not, and decided to just send them down. But yeah, he's had a couple no-hitters. He had the no-hit. Well, he had the combined no-hitter last year, and he didn't give up a single hit in his first start last week, which I was like, wow, really? Like,
yeah, he was lights out.
If his control is on, which I think he had some walks last game, which hurt him a little bit, but Manning has been. You take away the 2 comebackers where he broke his foot twice or something, like Manning is a solid piece, and they even talked about him being a little, like a trade chip, in the event that we want to go out and get another bat, which I don't know. That might come back to burn us later on if we made that decision. But yeah, he kind of even early on in the year, he's kind of earned a spot on this on the roster. It's just a matter of maneuvering around that because the bullpen's been pretty solid. I can, there's not really one person that I can just say, yeah, send him down for Matt Manning. So
Yeah, like, and we just, we've mentioned, Faedo used to be a starter, was a starter up until this year. Again, another guy that eked it out to make the opening day roster. So they, in addition to Manning, they've got some guys in the long relief that, if it wasn't for these double headers they've had to do, of course, the weather, don't get me started on that New York Mets delay. That should have been a cancellation from the get go. They waited around for 2 hours before they finally canceled the game.
right.
um, Including the SNY's broadcast team, who was caught on the live hot mic, and I wasn't too happy about it until it was called
Oh,
finally.
really?
But yeah, they do have more options than we think. So, if it's a spot start, it may be maybe Faedo. It could be someone else they have, or they'll keep going to Matt Manning. But it's a position that I think is a better recipe than having to go down to like double A and grab someone who you're just hoping you can get 4 innings out of without giving up 5, 6, 7 runs, and marking it more as a throwaway game versus a guy who can at least get you into the 6th inning, possibly keep them under 3 runs, quality start. And then let the lineup do their thing, and then if they can get it done, then great. You might be able to semi steal one in that regard. But yeah, I do like what they have as a collective. They're 40 man. But again, we have some more tricky maneuvering to do with guys and options and those that don't have it. So they do have to be a little bit smart about those transaction moves in terms of roster adjustments throughout the year.
Absolutely. And who do we have in the next? So obviously, we're at the end of the week, Sunday. We got the win today, but who do we have coming up in the next few series? And what are your thoughts on those teams, if you have any
Yeah,
thoughts?
so they don't get any off days for a while. Actually, it's not until I think quite a while. They're playing almost every day for the foreseeable future. So heading into next week, starting tomorrow, it's a continuance of their brief homestand. They get the Texas Rangers coming to town for 4 games. They're going to kick it off Monday night. Looks like Olson's going against our former lefty that we traded, Lorenzen. Um, Actually, no, that's not Lorenzen. No,
He's
no,
a
former
righty.
Tiger.
He's a righty. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think Lorenzen, he was a red actually previously, but and then they got some day games coming up. The next 3 are all day games for us: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They got Casey Mize against, I think, John Gray, Scooble against Dunning, and then to end it, it's Maeda against Adam Haney. Before they go on a 3-game road trip to face these same Twins over in the Twin Cities, and then that will lead into the end of the road trip for 3 in Tampa.
absolutely. All right. Well, that's pretty much all we got for the day. This was our first little pilot run. We're hoping to get some more of the gang on the show. I see Marcioni in the comments. So yeah, we gonna definitely keep things rolling. This was the initial time. This was my first chance working the boards and bringing Coach on the squad. But yeah, be on the lookout. We're gonna try to knock out a show. Um, try to knock out a show most Sundays, and I'm gonna still be doing my my batting lineup breakdowns here and there, especially if I see something interesting that pops up. But yeah, just be on the lookout. Subscribe to us with this. These shows are gonna be on Bleachers to Speakers, which is obviously our Lions affiliate for the foreseeable future. But yeah, subscribe to Bleachers to Speakers, the YouTube channel. That's the channel that we're building up right now. and just subscribe on all subscribe on
Socials.
all on the socials. I'll give Coach an opportunity to shout out his Twitter or anything he wants to do, but subscribe on all the streaming platforms as well. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple, we're on pretty much everything. But Coach, any other words that you want to put out there before we get up out of here?
Yeah, it's. I think a lot of us that are Tiger fans that have been around a bit, it was very weird opening day not seeing number 24 in the lineup for the first time in many years. So I mean, obviously, we had the moment for him in his final home game last year as a send off. So it, even though we knew that was the case, he wasn't coming back. It was still very surreal to not see Miggy in the dugout in the lineup, joking with the fans. Obviously, it's a big loss for baseball in general, but we feel a little bit more here in Detroit. But it's a new wave generational players. We've had some young talent for a couple years or a handful of years now, so we're excited to see what these guys can do for us. And as we get on throughout the season, we'll be able to provide some deeper analytics and some stuff that might be able to separate some of our guys from other players. And just looking to see what they're able to do. So again, like we mentioned, hot start for the AL Central. We kind of would like to see them keep it going more so for us and them. But
Right.
it's still for a long term. It's better for us to face more higher quality caliber divisional opponents and still be successful versus uh, beating up on them and then getting to the playoffs and realizing we still have some work to do. So, but I think a lot of us are excited for the season, you and I especially. So we're just looking forward to it, and week to week we'll start to get a better picture of this team.
All right, so that's gonna wrap up the show. Tell a friend to tell a friend. We got the Tigers going on Bleachers to Speakers. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and check us out on all streaming platforms. We're gonna be back probably at least every Sunday, but like I said, I'm gonna be doing some stuff in the meantime, in between time as well. And shout out to Coach, man. Coach did his first show live in front of the public, and you can run it back if you guys came on the stream, the YouTube channel late. You can check it out on Bleacher Speakers. You can run it back and watch the show in its entirety, and just be on the lookout because we got some more stuff coming.
Absolutely.